Leslie Denton. Let's get this conversation started. I am excited to welcome my guest, Aprill Harmon. Aprill is a board-approved licensed clinical social work supervisor, a certified life coach, a businesswoman, and accredited small business consultant with a passion for leadership development and a natural motivational speaker. Dr. April's own path to discovering her authentic leader consisted of trial and error and training and development, in which she earned an Associate's of Science in Biology, a Bachelor's and Master's in Social Work, a Master's in Business Administration, a Doctorate in Leadership Studies. She's also graduated from several local, regional, and national leadership programs. Dr. Aprill Harmon, Coach Aprill, just a leadership guru. Welcome to Real Grown Woman Talk.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I am so excited to have you here and just to talk about how to lead authentically while being a grown Black woman. I think that this is a conversation we definitely need to have. How did you discover your own leadership potential?
It was by accident. And really other people telling me, positioning me, putting the mic in my hand, putting me in positions of leadership, asking me to lead. Because I really naturally used to be a very shy person. I had mentors and supervisors and coaches and things like that really just saw something in me, and they would challenge me by putting me in those positions. So that helped me. Even going back to being in high school, middle school, playing sports, being voted the team captain and all that kind of stuff. So just always having someone to put me there, because I definitely would prefer to be in the background.
And that's usually how it happens, right? Many times people see it in us before we see it in ourselves.
Yes.
And that
Yes.
is beautiful. How did you become this authority on leadership? I mean, I know that you had people speaking to it, but then it looks like you took it and ran with it.
Yes, I did, because I fell in love really with motivating people, empowering people. In the field of social work, which is my background, you end up enabling people. And so I just started learning more about what it takes to motivate people. And that led me to wanting to study about leadership development. And I decided to get a doctorate in leadership studies. And like I said, I had also participated in a lot of leadership development programs myself, and it always left me feeling so empowered. And I just wanted to learn more. Like, I wanted to be able to other people. Getting my doctorate, that was 6 years of study, and it's all about leadership. And
So when it comes to leadership, how do you define authentic leadership?
an authentic leader is a person that actually holds the beliefs that they promote, they present, whether they're presenting to staff or to the public, and their behavior reflects their core values and ethics. There's 4 components to authentic leadership, which I'm gonna run through, which are self-awareness, which is of course being aware of your strengths, your weaknesses, your triggers, all those things, what you like, what you don't like, constantly doing a process of self-reflection, constantly evaluating yourself. And then relational transparency is when you openly share with others your own thoughts and beliefs while also balancing any inappropriate emotions. And then balanced processing is when you solicit other leaders or other authority figures or other experts, others, to get feedback for making a decision, so that you're making balanced decisions and not one-sided decisions. And then internalized moral perspective is that moral compass, that ethical foundation that you have, whatever those core beliefs and principles that you have. Are you making decisions and behaviors in alignment with that? So those are the 4 components of authentic leadership that you want to look at if you want to evaluate yourself and ask, are you being an authentic leader? Are you being authentic, period?
Oh, that's good. Can you just line them out for me again? Because I'm writing them down as you talk. What are the 4 again?
Self-awareness. And if you want to know, like, are you being self-aware, ask yourself, are you in tune with how you think, how you behave when you hear other people give you feedback? Are you aware that you're having that impact? Relational transparency, that's, do people trust you? Do people feel like you're being open and honest with what you tell them, or are you telling them one thing and doing another? balanced process, and are you making decisions that are going to hurt some people or benefit others, or is it a balanced decision? Have you thought it through? Have you thought about the consequences of those decisions? And then internalize moral perspective, meaning, are you being led by your core values, or are you acting or making decisions that are not in alignment with your core values? And if so, that's something that you want to look at.
So we're talking about how to lead authentically while being a grown Black woman. Let me ask you this. In what areas do you think leadership is important?
I think leadership is important in every area. People have this idea that leadership means your title. So if you have some title of authority, then you're a leader. Well, no, if because you have self leadership, and that's dealing with just you, how you manage yourself,
Hmm.
self discipline, self development, self growth, self awareness, self care. All of that's leadership. So you have leadership at home with your kids, with your spouse, with your family. Those are leadership skills also. Leadership is about taking ownership, being responsible, understanding that you have an influence, because we all have an influence. And that's what leadership is about, influence. So whether you're influencing your kids, whether you're influencing and it doesn't matter about age either, because a young person can be a leader too. So whether you're influencing your peers at school, the other kids at school, your kids on your team, if you're a coach, you influence the people. If you're a speaker, a teacher, it doesn't matter what you do. Everybody has some type of influence. It's somebody looking up to you. It's somebody looking at you, and they're making decisions off of how they live their life based on how you live your life, or the things that they learn from you, whether they learn it from you directly or indirect. So we all have leadership ability. We all have leadership responsibility. It's just a matter of how you develop that determines the outcome.
So true. I know that sometimes there's a question of, are you a leader and are you a follower? And if
Right.
I'm listening to you correctly, we are all leading because someone, again, is looking at you and determining what to do and also what not to do. So we all are leading in some capacity. And you're right. When we think about leadership, I mean, you that are listening, when you think and you heard the term leadership, did your mind immediately go into the corporate arena, or did it just go into just who you are and how you show up every day? When we talk about leadership, what gaps do you see in leadership that you knew that you could bridge that gap?
Well, there's definitely, first of all, just the idea that a lot of people don't even see themselves as leaders. Most of us are not trained to be leaders. No one tells us, hey, you're a leader. They don't have classes on leadership in school. Some of them do now. And in particular, when you're talking about people of color and women, a lot of people still do not to this day believe that women are leaders, and people of color have leadership abilities. So, if you look at the statistics on like the leadership in Fortune 500 companies and most executive leadership boards across the nation, CEOs, the COOs, those in the senior executive positions, there's very few women and minorities.
Right. That
So
is
for me, of course, I'm a woman and I'm a minority. It kind of came out of my own struggles that I've experienced. That concrete, it's not even a glass ceiling, it's a concrete ceiling for women of
true.
color. But wanting to bridge that gap really is my motivation, because I realize that while we can make more money and we can get good jobs and we can go to school, but until we really can get in those positions of leadership to where we can influence policy, that makes a big difference. I'm really hope to bridge that gap.
You're already doing it. You mentioned your own experience in leadership. It does feel like a cement ceiling sometimes. But did you find it challenging to be or do you find it challenging to be a grown Black woman in leadership?
Definitely, definitely. I like that you said a grown Black woman, because what I have found is most people do see Black women as almost like little girls or
Yes.
little playthings. You get undermined on all levels. People within your race and people outside of your race, people in those executive leadership positions where most of the people sitting at the table are white males. Everybody is judging everything you say. Everybody is judging everything you do. That's why it's so important to be comfortable in your own skin and to be authentic, because if you're waiting for someone to accept you fully, you'll be waiting a whole lifetime. You got to just go for it and make room for yourself, is what I found. most of the time we hold ourselves back, like we won't even go for positions. I mean, and I understand it because I have struggled with that too. Like, I don't want to deal with that because like what's at the top. We all heard like it's lonely at the top and things like that, or just being the person that speaks up, goes against the grain, stands up for what's right, chooses even how you raise your kids in today's society, choosing to raise your kids a certain way. That's leadership when everybody else may be doing something different. So it's all different ways that leadership can show up. But usually you are going to be going against the grain. So yes, it's always a challenge as a grown Black woman. Because for one, like I said, a lot of times people are they see us little girls, no matter what our age is, or they treat us as such. And then on top of that, you have people undermining your skills, undermining your knowledge. Most of us are overqualified for every position that we get anyway. We got more credentials than everybody at the table. So, and we know more than everybody because we got to know twice as much, right? So.
But you just hit on stuff that I was like, there's nothing worse.
I hit a nerve.
Yeah, because sit up and think about those opportunities or those moments when you gotta train somebody to be your supervisor.
Yes.
And I don't, yes. And I'm like, do they really? Are they trying to be funny? Like, do they really realize how insulting this is?
Right.
All because I am a woman or I am a Black woman.
Right. Exactly. Or when you've been doing the job and you've been volunteering, doing it as an extra duty, no pay, and then they create a position, then they hire somebody else outside, it's that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So, it's all type of things that we still, it's 2021, we still have to deal with as Black women. I know everybody's been talking about the whole Megan interview with Oprah. That just goes to show it doesn't matter royalty or what. When people realize that like you're a Black woman, they automatically put you as a subordinate or in their mind, they see you as the help. They don't see you as someone that can lead, even though you may be doing the leading and the heavy lifting. But, you really got to fight for what's yours is what I found is like, you got to be willing to fight for yourself, advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to get out there because what are you doing it for?
Right.
And that's what I always tell all my mentees and stuff like, that's the best advice that I received from a mentor. She said, you're going to school to get your PhD for leadership. You've been through all these leadership training programs. She said, I would like to see you exercising your leadership skills more. And I never really even thought about it until she said that, but that challenged me. And I'm like, you know what? She's right. Why did I do all of that? And I think that's the same for us as Black women. Most of us have these degrees and certifications and all this different stuff going on. We bosses. We out here doing the thing, and we hold ourselves back for whatever reason.
I remember when I was growing up, that was one of the things that was understood. A Black person, especially a Black woman, is that we had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition. And I know that there are some people who hear us having conversations like this, and I'm sure you've heard it too. Like, why does color have to be a thing? And see, until you've experienced it, you really don't understand. Right. Like, women are still finding their place. We are making strides, but there's a difference between being a white woman and being a Black woman. So we still have this other thing called our skin that people see before they even acknowledge our potential. And so when people say that, I was like, you still don't get it. You still don't get it. So have you ever had an experience where you felt like you weren't heard or treated differently because you were a Black woman?
All the time, yes. Even in academia, when it comes to the opportunities to present, the opportunities to become a professor, and you have the experience, it's on your resume, but then they always want to nitpick it. Like, I never forget, I was in an interview with a guy who, it was so funny because we're on a committee every month. I see this person, and this person now is interviewing me for a position, and he's like, oh, I'm glad to finally meet you in person. And I'm like, I sit next to you, and we're in this. And it's just like, it was so, but that kind of stuff, you can say something in a meeting and the very same thing that you said, no one acknowledges, and somebody else of a different gender or color says it, and then they get all these accolades. That type of stuff is still going on in 2021. But I tell people, if you're listening, and I know you experiencing it, don't let it stop you. And the best advice I got in one of the leadership trainings, I went in, the gentleman that was presenting, he was talking about, being a change agent and all this stuff. And of course, other leaders, other emerging leaders in the room. And we're all kind of murmuring about the same thing. Like, well, I try, they don't listen, they don't this. And he's jumped up on the table. He literally jumped on the table and yelled, if they don't listen, speak louder, make them listen. Very good advice. And I learned that that's true. I mean, it's, that old saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. I mean, it's like you got to make some noise. Otherwise, they'll just keep doing the same old thing. And that's, if you look at our history, that's historically been the case. And it's the same way in our own lives. A lot of people are just complacent with the status quo. You got to be willing to put yourself out there. You got to be willing to speak up, advocate for yourself. Many times we're comfortable advocating for other people. We're comfortable advocating for our clients. We're comfortable advocating for our family. We're comfortable advocating for our kids. But when it comes to us, we always want to back down. And I totally understand why, but I'm just letting you know that's something that we have to do. Like, it's not going away. It doesn't matter what industry, it doesn't matter what degree, because getting a PhD taught me how much racism exists in institutions of higher learning when you're stepping outside of the student role into the teacher role or instructor or professor role. It's a whole nother level of, I always wondered why, part of my motivation for getting a PhD was because I only had a handful of Black professors in my whole, and I have multiple degrees and everything. So I wanted to be that. Now, in hindsight, I understand why, because there's still that systemic racism, and you're going to deal with that. And I think that leadership is saying, "Hey, I understand what I'm facing, but I'm willing to take that challenge, and I'm leading the way because I know somebody else is coming behind me." That's another piece to it. Understanding that sitting at the table, like if I'm fighting and advocating for myself, that's also opening up the door for other people, other generations coming behind me.
That is so good, and people want to know. And I was had a similar experience in which I was in the industry, and we were talking about being heard and not versus not being heard, and how you have an idea and people just kind of, you hear crickets, and then somebody else can come and say the exact same thing you said, and it's like the best thing since sliced bread. And it bothered me because it happens over and over and over. And when you feel like you don't have an advocate, that's why people don't understand when they talk about the angry Black woman. That's when it comes out the wrong way, because it's been bottling up and you don't have anybody to advocate for you. So you got to advocate for yourself. So yeah, when we do get on that table and yeah, it's because you haven't heard us, and this just seems like the only thing you're gonna understand. A lot of people don't get that. Like, they don't get how it fit. Nobody, absolutely nobody in any color, creed, or sex likes to be ignored. But
Right,
when it comes to a culture or a race of people, and we are constantly ignored, people don't understand why we can come across angry and defensive. It's because this is the culture that you have created. This is the only way you guys can understand, or it is a defense mechanism so that we can try not to take it too personally, because one thing that we are as a race of people is resilient. So we gonna figure a way out to get it
right,
done. Now you might not like it, but
right.
we gonna figure out a way to get it done. So when it comes to our cultural
Exactly.
norms, what are some good, bad, and ugly that you've seen that you can share?
The good is the resilience. I mean, when you think about everything that's come against us, especially as Black women, I mean, oh my, you think about the racism, the sexism. And this not only applies, we're talking about the workplace, but think about the church. I mean, it's still churches that don't believe women should preach.
Woo.
It's still people that still think a woman's job is at home and taking care of the kids. It's a lot of that. It's still the whole like thing is something is wrong with you if you don't have a husband. I mean, we deal with so many different elements of not being heard. So I just want to say that. But the good part is that we are resilient. We continue to rise. We continue to grow. We continue to better ourselves. We continue to try to be the best that we can be and overcome. We're overcomers. So I think that's the good thing. And we still have somehow maintained our faith through all that we've been through, being able to maintain some form of spirituality or faith. And I think that's great. The bad, I think it's just the lack of support that we get when we talk about the workplace. That's one area where we fighting. every day, but then the lack of support that I feel like we get in our community from our own people is just damaging. Like you fighting on both fronts. That's one of the bad things that I feel. And then the ugly is it's traumatized. It's traumatized us, many of us, and caused us to internalize that hatred. And so I see that a lot, when you look at the ugly things that go on with us, and it manifests itself in so many different ways, drugs, violence, fighting each other, and the division and broken homes and all of that stuff. But that really just comes from that untreated trauma, that internalized hatred that we've been taught when we've been conditioned, and just seeing how it manifests its ugly head is something that I hope to see change. It is what it is.
I mean, just listening to you, I'm like, you know what? I salute all my grown black women. Honestly, I do. People don't and what you're sharing right now is the reason why I named this podcast. One of the reasons why I named this podcast Grown Black Woman Success, as a way to when I was growing up, my father told me I had three things going against me, three challenges. He said, you're black, you're a woman, and you're a Christian. He said, and unfortunately, you're going to face so many isms, racism, sexism. He said, but they can be overcome. I think about how black women are underrepresented, how strong we've had to be, and how little support that we get in return. I mean, it's like on every end, we're facing, like you said, in the church, in corporate, in relationships. It's like we carry the load. And this is not true of all things, but for the most part, we are so underappreciated. I wanted to just take this opportunity, just based on what you were just sharing, that every grown black woman listening, I salute you and I appreciate you for who you are. Because leading, as we're talking about, it's like in every area we're being dependent on, and it can be quite overwhelming sometimes. This kind of goes into the next question I want to ask you, is that when it comes to our black men, do you find that they are more protector or prey when it comes to black women in leadership?
And I know this varies for different people, but I can say just in my own personal growth, I've had those that have tried to tear me down, told me I'd never be nothing and all that, people that I love dearly. But I've also had, on the flip side, I've also had men that tell me, hey, you can do it, and keep going, and I look up to you, and that type of stuff. So I've had both positive and negative influence from black men. I'm grateful for the good. Good do outweigh the bad, truly. And that's one thing that I am grateful for. And I would say that to anybody, because I know we've all had those who they mean us no good. I mean, it seems like they just hate us. And I know what that feels like. But don't let that deter you from believing that there are some good brothers out there that'll motivate you and encourage you. Sometimes it's just a matter of changing environments sometimes. But also, I'm not going to minimize the damage from the negative, because those things that people said, but that kind of fueled me, because stuff I heard at a younger age, and it fueled me, and it gave me like that sense of like I'm gonna prove them wrong. But then I got to be a grown black woman, and I realized one day I got overwhelmed, and I was like, you know what? I got to stop. I'm enough. I had to deal with some unresolved trauma, because sometimes a trauma response for many of us is that, like you were saying, like we never had nobody. We didn't have any help. We were the help. We were everybody else's help. We did all the heavy lifting. Nobody ever thought to say, hey, are you tired? Hey, you need a break? Did you eat today? It's what did you cook, not have you eaten, that type of mindset.
What the hell
So,
is that, April?
for
That
real.
is so
But
true.
yes. And I just
Wow.
had to it's because you can just keep running and just going and going and going, but at some point I had to stop and just face the unresolved, the ugly. That stuff I thought I had pushed out and got over, but when I dealt with that, then I started to really have more self-leadership and being okay with being authentic. I think that's a part of us not being authentic, is worrying about the negative. I've personally experienced it, but I know some that have. It's unfortunate the things that women have to experience that still get minimized to this day. And so for me, I really do try. That's a part of my motivation in leadership, is all the women that I mentor now. I'm a mentor, I'm a supervisor. They traumatized. These women are traumatized. We all got got degrees and we doing this and we got businesses over here and we going to school and we don't. But when you sit down and we start and we run into these issues at our, whether it's at work or whatever, it really boils down to the fact that we grown Black women and we tired and don't nobody really know how tired we are. We've been hiding the trauma. We pushed it down so deep. And a lot of times, when it comes out is when we just have had enough, right? And
Yes.
then that's when it comes out and it just, it shows up at the wrong time, at the wrong moment. And so that type of stuff, I think we really
Yes.
got to deal with.
That is so true, April. People don't, and I know it's some women listening now that's high fiving in the air, like, yes, girl, yes, they don't get it. And even
Yes.
for our Black men, and it's so true. We try to make sure even when they come home, it's like when we get our work, we still got to be on. Come home, baby. How was your day?
Right.
How you doing? All of that. And not once do they think to ask, baby, have you eaten? You good? And this is not true of all of them, but it's true of enough of them.
Right.
Even on the job, people thinking that we have, slept our way to the top, and then the brothers that, y'all wanted equal rights, and so now you got it. And I mean, it's just like all we want is to be our best and do our best and get recognized just like anybody else. That's it.
Oh yes. Oh
And
yes.
and
Oh yeah.
no, we can't come to the office dressed a certain way and you start, making inappropriate remarks, looking at other things instead of our eyes. And I mean, it's just people don't get it. It's just so much we have to deal with. Not minimizing anybody else, but
It's so
just
much.
yes, yes. It's a
Yeah, it
struggle
is.
every day.
When you said something that is so true about the whole, the assumption that we slip our way to the top, and it's so much that goes into that. It's just being seen as sex objects. Black women have historically been seen as sex objects, and
Yes.
so that's why they're okay with the rappers and all of it. They get off on that, but they just are not comfortable with us at the table with them. They're not comfortable with us leading them, and
They're
so
comfortable
you
with us
still deal.
laid out on top of the table, but not sitting at the table. Feel
Exactly.
feel about it.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. You said something for real. Now that's a grown
Yes.
woman's conversation right there.
Yes.
Yes. I had a man tell me one time I was giving a presentation and I mean, and I just like I was so excited, because I'm like, I said, how did I do? And then he's like, I really wasn't paying attention to the conversation. I was looking at your breast. Now, mind you, I had a suit on with a blaze, and I'm just like, did you just say that to me?
Yeah.
And they didn't think they did anything wrong. I'm really thinking like I gave some great information today. I was so pumped up. Well, I wonder who else was just looking at me.
So, what are some tips that you can share with grown Black women to help them succeed when it comes to serving in any leadership capacity?
The main thing that I would say, first of all, is develop your skills, develop yourself. That speaks to that self awareness. Understand where your weaknesses are. And those are the areas that you want to focus on developing. If you know that you have a challenging time speaking up, being assertive, practice your communication skills. Speak as much as you can until you feel confident and comfortable speaking, because that's so important. Your communication skills are number one, because people really don't listen to you. They don't pay attention to you until you speak up. That's just the fact. Otherwise, they just gonna see you as a object, a sex toy, or whatever. Until you speak, and you speak enough, and you can and show them that you know what you're talking about. But it's not even about showing them. But speak your truth. Developing those skills is important. Relationships are important. And when I say relationships, whether you're talking about developing professional relationships, working relationships with people, the relationships you develop on your job, because that's how opportunities come your way, through relationships. Somebody refers you to somebody they know, and that's how it goes. Like and it's going to be based on their experience with you. And you never know what experience is going to be. So you always have to present yourself in a way, which is that self leadership piece, right? You always want to present yourself in a way that you never know if that moment or that person or that opportunity could potentially open the door for something greater. And then on the flip side of relationships, your relationships can really make you or break you. You have to at some point get comfortable letting relationships go that are not helping you go in the direction that you know you want to go, that are pulling you back, you have to let them go. And I mean, it's a way to do that, but some people just, they're not going to want to see you go. You have to choose yourself over that person sometimes. When it comes to information, being mindful of like what you feeding yourself, learn and study, being mindful of just the information that you receive and how you process it and how you behave, how you think. Those things are all important. When you realize that you're not going in the area that you should be going or that you want to go, sometimes you have to seek help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's one of our biggest issues is we're afraid to ask for help because we're not used to people asking us, do we need help? So we've just been conditioned to not ask for help. You really have to break out of that if you want to get some help. You got to ask for help. And that was probably the hardest lesson for me to ever learn was ask for help. And then always stay true to your core values. Like that is so important. Money comes and goes, people come and go, jobs come and go, opportunities come and go. How you respond to all of that is really going to be based on what's inside of you. And that's where you got to maintain that at all times. Taking care of yourself is important. Taking care of your mind, taking care of your body, making time. And I know it's hard to do, but at some point, you're going to have to choose you.
You have to choose you. That is so important. We are so notorious for putting other people ahead of ourselves. We are addicted to people pleasing and trying to be superwoman. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the life we were really meant to live, we have zero energy. Like we're burnt out. And so we end up living this mediocre life when we could be living this extraordinary life if we just made just a few shifts in our lives. Like you said, that was so good, just living out your core values. We will settle in relationships. We will settle in leadership. We will settle anywhere where we can find a little bit of attention, a little bit of love. And that's the danger when you're not living your authentic self. It's like you were settling in so many areas. I can't thank you enough for just reminding us that we are leaders in every area of our lives. And self-leadership is crucial now more than ever.
Women all across this world are experiencing the same things that we're talking about right now. So I think if the community showed more support to women, it's just gonna be a default over to everybody else. Cause I mean, we trying to figure it out. Like we grown women and we still trying to figure some things out. We still got our challenges, we still got our fights.
This has been so good. I want to ask you a couple of more things. Now we know that authority and leadership. You have done the work. You have shown up. You've given us even some great nuggets and wisdom on tonight. But what is one thing that people would be surprised to know about you?
The one thing people probably be surprised to know about me is I used to be really shy. Like I used to be so shy that when I got stood in front of a room, whether it was at church, school, or whatever, I would literally start crying. Like I would just break down, start crying. I would have to be taken off stage. Or I just wouldn't get up there. I was very, very shy. Like, and it didn't even have to be on a stage. Like, I just didn't like attention on me at all. So we could be standing around with my cousins and I would feel so overwhelmed with being put on the spot. I would start crying. I used to be a crybaby. I really did.
What?
I couldn't.
I
Yes,
can't
I
see
could.
that, April.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that. A lot of my family, they're like, when I'm speaking, they're like, you used to wouldn't say nothing. I'm like, yeah, I used to wouldn't say nothing to nobody.
Wow, that is you wouldn't have told me that either. I would not have known that. As you have certainly blossomed out of that now. How can people get in contact with you?
You can find me, reach out to me. My website is Coach Aprill with 2Ls.com. You can send me a message on there. It has my number and contact information and email on there as well. You can also follow me on social media at Coach Aprill with 2Ls, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Coach Aprill with 2Ls. So reach out, follow me. I'm all about empowerment and just help them inspire people to become what they can be. And I know a lot of times, whether we accept it or not, people do rely on social media for inspiration, motivation. I just try to the content that I try to put out there is really to try to motivate people. I may not ever meet you in person, but if you follow me, you will get some motivation. On LinkedIn, I'm Dr. Aprill Harmon.
All right, Dr. Coach, go ahead, leadership expert. I certainly thank you for stopping by the Grown Black Woman Success Podcast. I absolutely love having conversations with amazing women. Thank you for sharing some tips and strategies and wisdom to help us, really learn how to lead authentically as grown Black women. And before we go, I want to find out how you rock your real grown womanness. Is it stilettos, wedges, or sneakers?
Wedges, out of those, I would say wedges or heels. Not stilettos, but either heels or wedges.
Okay. You got your dress, your power suit, or your jeans.
Power suit. I'm a power suit person.
I can see that. All right. Matte, glossy, or lip gloss?
Lip gloss.
All right. Again, thank you so much, Coach Aprill, for being a guest here on Grown Black Woman Success Podcast. We are looking for just continued greatness from you. Be sure to follow her on all the socials and visit her website, CoachAprill.com.
Thank you for having me, Leslie. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Grown Black Woman Success Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post it on social media. And to really show me some love, leave a positive rating and review. Be sure to visit grownblackwomansuccess.com to stay in the know of products and services we're offering to help you attract massive success into your life. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at The Leslie Denman. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll see you next time.